Hello everyone, this is update for October 21, 2022, day 240 of the war and of the date update. So today is another day where there is essentially close to nothing is happening on the front lines, and I will focus more on the general strategic issues. Um, so the first thing is Ukraine received one unit of this very advanced radar system, TRM L4D from Germany. That's well, it's extremely helpful. It's unfortunately the Ukraine will receive 4 units in total. As you can see, this is a very advanced piece of military technology or radar technology, and it's an excellent tool for small targets, which is in generally a very big problem for for radars to detect. So this is it fills that kind of like a difficult gap for the typical, especially Soviet radar systems. So this is going to be extremely helpful. It's probably intended to be sort of complementary to IRIS-T, which Ukraine also received, and also in small quantities, but better something than nothing, as they say. So the advantage of this, why this is important, is because it can basically detect small targets, and also and this is also kind of like how to say related to this. It means also that it can detect low flying targets and maneuvering targets, right? So this could be like Iranian UAVs or Russian cruise missiles, Caliber, and so on. So this is an excellent tool. It's as I said, probably will be working in pair with IRST, because I have big doubt that it can be somehow efficiently integrated with the Soviet rocket system. But who knows? I don't know all of the details about this. So in terms of, okay, what is it? What's the effect? What is it gonna do? It's not gonna change things sort of drastically. It is gonna help Ukrainian, for Ukraine to defend, to close the skies or partially close the sky. But it's definitely not gonna solve the problem. So the strategic problem remains because this is just a radar, right? It's an excellent piece of technology, excellent radar, but you need also missiles, and you really need kind of like integrated system with it. And Ukraine got also, I think, 4 IRST or something like that, and this is probably going to complement them. So this is not going to cover even the main sort of um, like hubs on Ukrainian territory. So just gonna probably cover a couple, 4 important sort of um, potential targets for the Russian attacks, but that's pretty much it. It's not going to change anything drastically. It's not a game changer, let's put it this way. But it definitely will make Ukrainian um, anti-missile defense or anti-UAV defense much stronger. But unfortunately, it's too few. That's a problem, and I would even say it's a little bit too little. Let's now move to Belarus. This is the country that's straight up north of Ukraine, and it's essentially one country with Russia, because Russia essentially controls this country. It finances it. It gives them crude oil for sort of further processing, and basically this is kind of like a symbiotic relationship where there is, where one starts, the other ends is not clear. There's essentially the boundaries are very um, just just on the paper. Let's put it this way. So this is the map of the areas where the uh, Belarus population is not allowed to go in the forests. So the red one is complete prohibition, and the orange is partial prohibition. So this being kind of like presented for the future as the evidence of the future attack uh, from Belarus on Ukraine, which, if you remember, several days ago, I spoke about Ukrainian general staff, very concerned about the potential attack from Belarus. And in my opinion, this is over exaggerated, and probably the chances are extremely low of this invasion happening. And let's just actually go factually to understand why this, for example, piece of evidence is, um, how to say, irrelevant, probably the best way to say it. So first of all, as you can see, the prohibition area, complete prohibition area, is um, on the eastern side of Dnipro. So this is essentially Chernihiv, right? So the Chernihiv is kind of like south of this area, or let's say west of this, sorry, east of this area, right? So this is really Chernihiv, right? So if you would say, okay, complete prohibition, then it's really Chernihiv, right? This is not, there's this is the to attack Kiev from the west. This is the area. This is the launching pad, right? But even here, there is contradiction because Ukrainian general staff was talking about uh, attack from the new direction, from more like the southwestern part of Belarus. This is Brest region of Belarus. So basically, attack more somewhere from this area and then go south to kind of cut off Ukraine, split Ukraine into two pieces, and prevent supply of the Western weapons to Ukrainian army. So again, as you can see, that doesn't support that. So as a whole, is hopefully it makes sense that this is extremely low probability event, and it's probably more, I would say, informational noise and distraction from actual real things that are happening. This is just wanted also a little bit switch just to show this Russian defensive line that they are building. If you remember, I showed it's kind of like along the Siversky Donetsk River to kind of cover the flanks of the Wagner mercenaries. So if Ukrainian, so let's just go here. So basically, if you remember, it goes kind of like along the Siversky Donetsk River, and then just kind of like goes here towards Popasna. So the Popasna is kind of like a starting point, going up north and then along the river. So this is has been built by Wagner mercenaries to protect them in case the front line here collapses and Ukrainian troops will liberate this North Luhansk area. So let's actually quickly look. So as you can see, there are four lines of the dragon tees. So like this is sort of two lines here forming like sort of bigger line, and the same is here. And then this is anti-tank ditch. So the most sort of dangerous out of all of this is probably anti-tank ditch, but in because you can sort of address with artillery. You can make passages with the help of artillery in the Dragon T's. That's, I mean, it's not easy, but it's doable. Let's put it this way. And especially Ukraine has very precise artillery and HIMARS system, so it is definitely achievable, doable. But it's definitely gonna, you know, give sort of more defensive capabilities for the Russian forces in Ukraine. And another point here, as you can see, it's not contiguous line. It's more designed to block sort of more like more vulnerable like location. So you can still bypass it from from let's say here in this specific case from on the flanks. Probably it's also let's say controlled by Russian artillery. So if you try to come there, they already prepared because they know all of the coordinates, so they will, the losses will be high. So as a summary, it's it is helpful for the Russian side, and it's definitely gonna increase the lethality on attacking Ukrainian troops if they get to this point when they will be attacking here. Now let's actually talk a little bit, couple more things that are happening more in the world. Oh no, actually, I forgot. Let's actually talk a little bit about Ukraine and finances in Ukraine. So Ukrainian government came out and said that Ukraine at this point um, the 60% of Ukrainian government expenses, or state budget, is financed by the Western donors. Out of the 60%, is 55% is financed through straight debt, and 45 is grants or equity, or basically free, in simple layman terms, free money. So the main donors are obviously, as you can imagine, US, EU, Germany, then surprisingly Canada, Japan, and UK. So those are the biggest. Uh, mm, Given what's going on with the electricity situation, this number probably will gonna go quickly up to probably in a month, probably or so, to 80%, and by the end of the year it could be as high as 90, or really high numbers. Let's put it this way. Hard to predict, but essentially Ukrainian economy at this point completely wiped out. So now, now let's actually switch to China. If you remember, also like 2 or 3 days ago, I spoke about China, that there is big sort of meeting of or big elections are happening there in the two Central Committee of Communist Party. Essentially, this is kind of like a ruling council that, well, there is a head of it that really drives everything, but he still needs support in this council. He not like truly king, to extent he is, but it's definitely more sort of trimmed down version of the king. So he has some like sort of checks and balances in this committee. And so, if you remember, I spoke that there are essentially two wings in China, which very logical. One is pro-war, the other one is pro-trade. They're not really pro-peace, because it's just philosophical. How to say, philosophical view that you can achieve sort of more through trade than through war. Basically, it's also sort of, how to say, um, aggressive attack, but in other means. Let's put it this way. And so far there were initial elections done. So like not for the entire committee, but few, I think 3 or 4 positions, and this pro trade, pro soft power wing so far lost, because I think 3 or 4 individuals from that group did not get re-elected to the central committee. So it looks like a basic. So it looks like the pro-war wing, which is sort of, let's say, run by Xi Jinping, is winning so far. So this is obviously very preliminary, but looks like it's heading in that direction. In terms of the energy infrastructure and energy distribution in Ukraine, things remaining more or less the same. Russian attacks continue. They slowly but surely destroying this whole energy infrastructure system. When it will sort of disintegrate into islands remains to be seen, very unclear. It also depends largely on the intensity of Russian attacks and success. But one thing is certain: if they continue these attacks, eventually it will sort of not collapse but disintegrate, basically, and then eventually it will collapse, because probably they will continue their attacks. There is no, because that's one of the most efficient ways to put pressure on Ukrainian government and Ukrainian population in general, to basically demand end of this war from Ukrainian government. So this is, I guess it's in a way you can also think it as similar to Allies' air attacks on Germany in, let's say, 43, 44, 45, that were actually absolutely not successful from that perspective. Uh, and so we'll see if this is going to be successful or not successful from the, from a perspective of putting pressure on Ukrainian government to basically make concession and agree to peace, which is, just want to make it very clear, would be totally disastrous idea, because and I showed this many months ago, the 3 partitions of Poland. this is the lesson that everybody should understand, that the way Poland lost its independence uh, in the 18th century is first there were three. So the first partition, you know, portion of the country was basically taken over by Germany and Russia and Austro-Hungarian Empire. Then there was second one, and then the final third one was done. So this is the same. Russia is pursuing the same strategy here. So the idea is, okay, we chew up a little bit more this time, or not a little bit, but quite a bit more, and then we're gonna say, okay, this is a peace, and then then in a year or two, once Russia gets a break, the sanctions are gonna be lifted. They or maybe not in a year or two, let's say 5 years, 3, 4, or 5 years. This attack will be renewed, and obviously the hope on the Russian side that the situation politically will change in the West, so it's going to be distracted with its own problem over China, and they will be able to successfully sort of finish unfinished business. Let's put it this way. So, in other words, all of these concessions, they don't lead to any kind of peace. It's absolutely delusional, because some people in the West believe that this is gonna solve the problem. I mean, we heard Elon Musk was saying that, which is absolutely misguided. By the way, I saw that he was studying the sort of the problems of this region in Donetsk and Luhansk on the propaganda book by basically person who is like um, Russian propaganda puppet at that time, uh, installed by Russia in the Donetsk region, basically. So this is obviously, this is so you understand the level of sort of research he did to come up with his ideas, right? And then there was another, like, not even clear. Well, I mean, I guess it's clear. Another person, Bill Ackman, basically hedge fund manager from New York City. Apparently, his trades and positions are going against him again, and he's probably losing his investors, so he's feeling the pain. And there's no question that he's talking his book. He's obviously there's no interest of peace or sort of ready resolution here. It's all just personal, and I would say very primitive interest, because they don't even understand that this immediate small gain will turn into huge big loss down the road. So this is, again, as I said, this is just gives you sort of clue or idea of the level of the some of the parts of leadership in the West, which is completely, I would say, also incompetent largely. So now let's actually do works through the front line. We're gonna start as always from the north, and then go in a clockwise fashion. So first, things along the state border, more or less the same. Ukrainian side is trying to attack Russian energy infrastructure by the border. It's obviously, I would say, useless effect, just a propaganda thing, and in many ways just waste of resources, of very limited resources Ukraine has. It would be better to spend them on doing counter battery attacks on the actual front line. And I will discuss why, because it leads to very, I would say, horrific Ukrainian losses that and completely unnecessary losses. We'll discuss that once we hit Kherson bridgehead. But anyways, these attacks are, I think the right expression would be like a mosquito bite for elephant. Because Russia can bring electricity, they have enough resources. Even if the transformers are destroyed, they still, Russia is a big sort of country, big inventory of things. So you can always, move resources to this small sort of leakage and solve it, which Ukraine does not have that. Even Ukraine is not a small country by any means, but relative to Russia, it is a small country. And oh, by the way, on the energy infrastructure, all of those transformers that were destroyed, the lead time is about 9 to 18 months. So let's say if everything stops, all of this damage will be fixed if everything goes well in about 18 months at best. So this is really like this is really big problem for probably next 5 7 years in Ukraine in terms of its infrastructure where it's going to be. Now let's actually move to the North Luhansk front line. So here, Russian troops were active. They trying to actually counterattack and push Ukrainian troops basically behind this river. I think don't wanna lie, we just don't remember the name. It's just a small river, but they still trying to push Ukrainian forces behind it. So far, it's complete stalemate and sort of status quo. Totally unclear why actually Ukrainian troops stopped here and did not exploit huge opportunities that were right in front of them. But largely, these opportunities at this point more or less lost. Now let's move to North Donbass section of the front line. Things here are more or less the same. Um, Attacks here by Wagner mercenaries or in the very north section of it, but main focus is obviously here around Bakhmut, Soledar, Bakhmut itself, and then this area, the salient that Russian troops or Wagner mercenaries created about I think maybe actually even 4 or 5 days ago. This, which kind of undermines Ukrainian defensive positions here. And as you can see, Ukrainian command launched counterattack in attempt to destroy this salient. The attack was not successful, but Russian attacks were not successful either. So it kind of like remained status quo. Then there were some other attacks in the sort of southern sector of this North Donbass front line that also led to nowhere. So basically, it's just one big stalemate there. Then let's look at central Donbass front line. This is the same here as up north. Typical Russian attacks. You can sort of check them with the clock. They always happen in these areas. Uh, Russian troops do make some small progress, moving a little bit west. There is a village called Pervomaiska, which is next to Piski. So they're making small, day by day, small progress there. I mean, eventually, if this continues, they will capture that village, right? And then they're also making small progress in penetrating Ukrainian defenses in this sort of more north and then a little bit western direction. So they try to sort of expand in these two main areas. The attacks here near Mariinka were not successful. Now let's quickly check Zaporizhya front line. Things here are, as always, quiet and probably will be quiet for a long time. Now let's move to Kherson bridgehead. And things here are sort of quiet. Today, Ukrainian command was quite successfully attacking Russian ferries and pontoon bridges and these artificial bridges, inflicting pretty painful damage to the Russian troops that were moving across. As I said, there is big suspicion that Russian command is withdrawing troops from here. Not all of them, and not everything at large. In one sort of shot, but slowly, right? Slowly, like draining amount of the resources here. But we'll see if that's correct sort of hypothesis. Let's put this way. So I just want to mention this about the Ukrainian troops and how horrifically they, let's say, commanded and the suicidal attacks. So there is Russian on Russian propaganda channels. There is a video floating showing Ukrainian attack in this area here that was not successful. That happened 2 or 3 days ago. I mentioned about it, and if you look at it, this is a very horrific approach. It's basically suicidal kamikaze attack where Ukrainian troops go like in essentially line, and they get into the area where the Russian artillery just basically um, destroyed them because um, the problem is that the Russian artillery is not being sort of suppressed or destroyed in advance of the attack, and that's totally criminal. Anyone who sort of knows anything about the, how to do attacks or anything about military, they understand first you need to suppress artillery and multiple rocket launchers. This I'm sort of talking when I say artillery, I'm talking very broadly, right? And and you don't attack if you don't suppress those or destroy better, right? Otherwise, this is just sending people to die for no reason, and that's exactly what happened there. And they, in the process, not only many soldiers died, not just general servicemen died, but also a good amount of equipment was lost there. So, and I can imagine there was quite a bit of demoralization in that unit as a result of it, because people, you cannot lie to people. They may not understand much, but they see that they being sort of thrown against the wall, like in sort of typical Soviet approach in World War II. By the way, this really reminds how the Soviet troops were storming German positions in World War II, and this is, I would say, criminal, completely unacceptable, and in a way, you can even say that this is only, call it Russian agent or Russian spy can do that kind of stuff, right? Because if you in your right mind, if you're commander, you would never do that. So again, this kind of shows that there is a problem at the command level that is completely incompetent by making such a moves, right? But there's also, there is very clear from how the troops were attacking and reacting actually to artillery fire that they also not sort of mentally trained how what to do and how to do. They kind of got sort of lost, and that actually created even more damage due to Russian artillery fire. So if they were more sort of aggressive and knowing what to do, the losses would be actually um, fairly minimal. Let's put this way. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow.